This video is about Robert F. Kennedy Jr., the appointed head of the Centers for Disease Control. He is seen as a strong opponent of vaccination. So, why is this important? Well, our country is really polarized, and for me, that's deeply painful to witness. I don't even feel safe. Not because the other side is harmful, but just because there's a lot of negative feelings on, or perceptions on my part, my friends, the other side. It's a mess, and there haven't been too many signs of it getting better. So I'm going to offer right here a way for people in my camp, the liberal camp, to relate to people like Robert F. Kennedy Jr., people who seem to oppose and distrust vaccination. I'm going to discuss it, describe it through the lens of something called radical acceptance, which I introduced in my video on coping gently with my traumatic past, but it has much broader application to all kinds of issues and experiences that cause distress, that are triggering or upsetting. It's sort of a matter of stepping back and not, as I said before, not getting down and in the mud and wrestling with the opponent or the threat. Let me remind you, radical acceptance never means freezing like a deer in the headlights of an oncoming car. That's not it. It never means adopting a helpless stance or doing nothing. And I'm going to try to explain that. Finally, I don't offer myself as like a role model or an expert on radical acceptance. I have tasted it, and I can bear witness that it can be pretty sweet and very nourishing. At least that's been my experience, and others have reported that too. So what is it? What is radical acceptance? How do you do it? Well, there are many routes. One is loving kindness. Of course, that's very difficult when it looks like the other side is out to get us. I'm not saying they are. I'm saying there's a perception, and that gets in the way of loving kindness. Another tool is like looking for the commonality between the two sides. And this too looks very difficult because we've just moved so far apart that we've just taken opposite stances. Okay, so how can we even start on radical acceptance? Well, I fell back on something that's helped me my whole life, even for 60 years or longer. Curiosity. For example, in this week's videos about Charlie Kirk, I explored his profile a bit, tried to understand what kind of a man he was. Now I'm going to do likewise for the opponents of vaccination, not Kennedy specifically, but opponents of vaccination. People offer various reasons for their opposition. Often they emphasize doubt about the effects of the vaccination on the lives of their children. It's no wonder. Molecular biology and immunology, which is the role of molecular and cellular biology in defense against disease, well, these subjects aren't taught in high school, and in fact, for almost any major except pre-med, they're not taught in college either. And they're not easy subjects. There's a couple of videos on my channel, A Mother's Molecular Love and the Survival of the Unborn Child, which is basically the same video under another name, where I explore why it's got to do with the survival of the unknown child. But the point is that it illustrates just how complicated immunology is. Immunology being the basis of vaccination. Okay, so where's the fire? What is the fight about? Well, the Center for Disease Control, the dominant federal agency, they ask us, and have for decades, asked us to take on faith that vaccination is harmless and protective. I could explain logically why the CDC believes that or why I believe it, but logic really isn't the issue here. The issue is faith and trust. There's something called a threat bias, well established in psychology, where we're most sensitive to stimuli or facts or beliefs that look like there's danger. I mean, we evolved that way, to constantly scan our environments for danger and threat. That was required for survival in primitive conditions, and we still have it. And once harm has been done, and I know this very personally, once harm has been done, it can be nearly impossible to let go of that perception that there's of danger, that there's a threat. There's a structure in the brain that I frequently refer to, the amygdala. It's the fear gatekeeper. It looks at the memories that are coming up in the moment and what we see and hear and feel, and decides, is this dangerous or not? And there's a hippocampus that helps us remember stuff that happened before with valence, that is, with an attached value, good or bad, a classification. So the amygdala and the hippocampus participate in the threat bias, but you don't really need to know the neuroscience. Just know that, like they say, once burned, twice shy. So that's how I read, in my limited view, I'm naive about the conservative movement. I don't know a lot, but I know a little. And I believe that a lot of people feel they've been betrayed, disenfranchised, manipulated, controlled, or otherwise abused by the government, by one particular party, the one they're not aligned to. So we might try to test whether this perceived harm, say the perceived harmfulness of vaccines, reflects reality. We could ask that question. That's not. That'll take us down a rat hole. And if I were to publicly advocate my conclusions, I probably will. But if I don't do it wisely, it'll add fuel to the fire. We could ask why Kennedy and so many of others have been appointed, given power to turn their feelings into reality. Well, I choose people based on partly, at least I have for a long time, chose people who've kind of experienced the same trauma, the same harm as I have. And I can only assume that people who believe they've been ignored, disenfranchised, oppressed, and I'm talking about the right, also choose people who they believe are going to understand their experience, and so that's why Kennedy was appointed. Okay, I want to mention something called ad hominem. It's the basic trap that makes this whole dialogue between the two camps toxic. In academic philosophy, they call it ad hominem, which means to the person. An ad hominem attack is, well, in this case, it would be to turn away from complex questions about the real and perceived benefits of and harm of vaccination and focus instead on something much simpler, much more primitive, an attack on Kennedy as a person. That would be what I call getting down into the mud and wrestling with the adverse feelings. So I appeal to you, dear reader, I appeal to you, become curious, genuinely curious, with an open mind, why he has his beliefs, why he has his followers. Let's explore and let's be curious about our own capacity to witness an opponent's reality while simultaneously honoring our own and stepping back from value judgments. I said one of the basic fear responses is to fight. Let's become curious rather than simply angry. Thank you. Good night. Speaking to you from the shores of a very large lake in the Midwest, and grateful for your attention. Thank you.